Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Akshay Garkel here, and I'm happy and delighted to welcome my fellow panelists. As we all know, as we all say, data is the new oil, and especially in the regulated industry that we have in the banking and financial segment, this oil is all the more pure. And from that perspective, the banking and financial segment essentially is pretty much under the purview of scrutiny from the regulators, and especially when it comes to data protection of customers, data protection and making sure that there are no breaches, or a very strong breach management or a breach prevention mechanism within the banking and financial segment. So with that, I'll start with Mr. Malik, and essentially like to understand, Mr. Malik, when you talk about the banking and financial segment, and you talk about data protection, especially when you talk about a cloud adoption, right? And today we've been actually seeing a lot of organizations adopt the cloud. There have been conversations, especially at the board level as well. For example, how do we futuristically see, how do we take the core application to the cloud? And of course, those conversations have already started. Obviously, making sure that the regulators approve of it. So from that perspective, what do you think is the way to go? What are the top 3 or 4 areas that you would basically like to talk about in terms of the controls to make sure that when there is a cloud adoption, what organizations who are specifically under the purview of regulatory perspective should look into?
Sure. Thanks, Akshay. So, about 3 years back, I had a very negative opinion about cloud because I was not sure how the security is evolving, whether it's network security or database security, or when you exit a cloud hosting environment, how do you ensure you don't leave data behind, and so on. So having said that, I think these, big cloud service providers have much bigger capability and financial strength to keep investing in new technologies and new prevention methodologies right across, which most of us, almost all of us individually, will not be able to implement. And so the industry has seen very robust progress on the cybersecurity front in the last 2-3 years. And today I'm completely converted. We clearly have a strategy to migrate to public cloud in the next about 3 to 4 years in 4 phases. And we already have had the private cloud on our premises on Microsoft platform for the last 7 to 8 years now. So I think it's less of a concern than earlier about security, because these firms are investing a lot. They're giving a lot of options to choose from. The problem, having said that, the problem actually is that most of us do not understand the security options provided by these large cloud services providers. And we were already overwhelmed by a number of flags our admin operators see on the system to understand the meaning of each flag and how do different flags work with each other. Already it's a challenge. Even on on-prem, we keep going wrong many times. And this is becoming a bigger challenge on cloud because not too many of us really understand all the options available. And also, this being a new technology in the last few years, this has evolved. Most of us are dependent on outside vendor partners who are supporting us. So in-house talent building is very key, which is an issue right now because talent is scarce in the market. Experience is scarce in the market right now. So dependence on these business partners exposes you to a different level of risk, because they will have both the admin users are on their side and plethora of options available to choose from, and you are at their mercy. So over a period of time, we need to ensure that we build talent internally. We understand what these business partners are doing, what these platforms are offering, what's more advanced, which we can leverage at what price and all. Is going to be a challenging game for the next about 3 to 4 years, I would say, by the time we pick up various pieces and start using it the right way. But overall, I would say that cloud offers very robust security environment, and we need to know how to use it. And this will keep evolving. We haven't had any severe case internationally on the cloud security breach so far. That's good news. But having said that, we all need to be working in that direction. And the second point is that we need to invest in our own tools for application monitoring, for network monitoring. We need to have our own capabilities to detect what's going wrong in our setup. Various crawling methodologies are available, and also do I would say ethical hackers to be deployed. Hire a couple of good security firms. They will do that for you. Ask them to break into your network. Ask them to break into your email systems. Ask them to break into your databases. See encryptions are working or not. And one small step on the lighter side, I say sometimes that our own admin users are pretty relaxed on when it comes to password setting. To strengthen the passwords, otherwise you're open to all types of risk. I remember a few years back, Shivaji 2007 became a very famous password amongst our employees in southern India when the Shivaji movie of Rajinikanth went big. I love biryani 123 used to be a common one in Hyderabad and so on. So we just need to make sure that admin passwords are not weakened, strengthen them as much as possible, eliminate all hit movies from your database possibilities and so on. So these are some basic controls, preventive stuff that we can do. In some situations, it will still happen that you're hit. That's a long story, and we can cover it in a separate question if you like.
Sure, absolutely. I think a very important points you mentioned. I'll take the second point that you mentioned first in terms of the capability of actually doing a litmus test in your environment before the cyber criminals actually come up and pick that up. The second point that you really you mentioned was about the people and the skilling part. I think a very important aspect there too. So I'll take a cue from both of these areas and I'll move the question to Mr. Sujay. In terms of Mr. Sujay, we've seen that cyber criminals are there. If you pick up Economic Times today, you pick up Times of India, you find at least one article on at least digital or security. And I'm sure, somewhere there is always a mention of any breach. There are a couple of breaches where the breaches are only increasing as we speak. For the last 2 years, given the new normal, of course, we've seen an increase of all of that. What do you think essentially those cyber criminals are up to at this point in time? And how do organizations actually go about protecting or creating an additional safeguard while actually complying to their regulators?
Thanks, Akshay, and thanks for that. It's a good question. Yes, you're right. I think cyber activity and cyber criminal activity has really increased. I think just in the last year or so, they've been, reported over 500 organizations who have got breached, largely because of, there has been a democratization of cybercrime as well, where now it's no longer just the 2 or 3 great large organizations who are actively capable, but those capabilities are being sold as toolkits for many more users to start. Many more people get into this business as well. So it's been a larger, attack vectors as such, which probably has led to it. Now, on the other hand, what we're also seeing is that a lot of organizations are becoming more connected. So it does mean that, okay, you are an organization, you're taking care of whatever's your infra, you're physically what's in your infra, maybe what you have on cloud as well. But end of the day, you are also connected to other organizations for either through APIs, through direct connection, or maybe just data sharing, right? And especially when it comes to data breaches or in ransomware attacks, they're just looking, cybercriminals are looking for that data wherever that data sits. Some of the recent breaches which have actually hit headlines are not even breaches of that organization, but of service providers. So there's a supply chain fraud and supply chain cyber risk also has become an issue. So yes, so the attack surface is increasing, the attack vectors are increasing. There's bound to be an increase of successful attacks as well. And what we're seeing is obviously as it's open secret that what was reported is only a fraction of what it is. So it is an interesting and challenging world out there as far as cybersecurity is concerned. What can organizations do? I think it's really down to the basics, right? Visibility. I think visibility is a big factor. We have noticed that there's a lot of shadow IT which organizations may have old servers which they have decommissioned but not decommissioned completely. As Mukesh made a point, when you're really exiting a particular environment, are you following a full process of really exiting it fully and deleting all the data? Or are you leaving it there for someone to exploit it down the line when you're no longer updating it? I think that's something which is very critical, is really to have visibility on what your IT infrastructure looks at, not only as yourself, but visibility into what your connected entities are doing, how secure are they. The second one I would want to call out is, again, basic hygiene, IT hygiene, right? Now, are the systems patched? Are the back doors closed? Malicious actors will always try to take the easiest route in. We have a capability, we do scan a lot of entities as part of one of our services. And we observe that despite having very good IT setups and cutting edge technology, there are a lot of companies who really have some basic patches which have not been applied, or having out of date web encryption in place. Again, one more insight from that is we score these entities, and then we have consistently seen that companies with a poor hygiene have got around 3 to 3.5 times more likelihood of being breached. I mean, it sounds logical, but then we have data also showing us that, right? So it's important that the very basics of IT hygiene, visibility of what your environment is, developing your programs internally, and again trying to follow some robust certification programs, which kind of give a structure to how to follow your and keep your environment safe. These are a few things that need to really come together. As again, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of tools outside. It's just proper usage of those tools and consistency in maintaining hygiene, I think, are the critical aspects.
Thank you, Sujay. And I think so far the common denominator of our discussion has been essentially going to basics. I think Mukesh highlighted on some of the examples and picked up certain trend analysis which were very obvious, but highly impactful in a negative way to the organization. And you spoke about, of course, the visibility aspect. I'll just park the visibility for now, but the basics is where you need to basically address. It may sound very simple, but of course, if it's not addressed, then obviously it can create a huge impact within the organization. Coming to the visibility part, and my question to you, Samuel, is that there are various ways of looking into visibility of organizations, looking at various events, looking at how do you basically, what mechanism you follow to categorize those events as incidents, and essentially how do you predict your attack surface. Do you really know that you essentially there are dormancies within the organization which can actually erupt at a specific given point in time because now they've collected enough information and they can hold the organization to ransom and so on and so forth. So I think big data is the buzzword which essentially is being spoken about by many organizations today. So how do you think cloud infrastructure and big data essentially from a safeguard mechanism can actually form a fair enough robust control against threats?
Hi, Akshay. First of all, good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure and honor to be on this panel. And it's a great pleasure to meet all of you. Akshay, I'm meeting you after some time. It's indeed a great pleasure. To introduce the audience and everyone, I'm Samuel, and I head the India and SAARC region at Cloudflare. And we are talking about cloud and cloud protection. Cloudflare is a global cloud platform, and our mission is to have.
You have something.
We focus our efforts on 3 key pillars, Akshay, and it's security, performance, and reliability. We want to make the internet safer, we want to make it faster, and we want to make it more efficient and reliable. While I'm leading Cloudflare for the India region in helping organizations secure their network and data, I started my career in an entirely different security space. I was part of the defense in-depth air defense system in Indian Air Force 30 years back as a short service commissioned officer. And post that, I've been in the security and network industry. You asked about how Cloudflare and the cloud infrastructure in general can safeguard against the new threats. The digital transformation has led to really flat networks. And today, internet is the new corporate network. And the COVID-19, the pandemic brought about the biggest security threat companies have ever faced. Securing all the employees, the applications, the data, and the networks in the office, outside of the office. Almost overnight, the security teams lost the visibility. We heard Sujay speak about visibility. Visibility is key to security. So people did not have visibility into the VPN traffic, network traffic, the tunnel traffic. Employees moved from an supervised to an unsupervised Wi-Fi networks with new video conferencing technologies. The IT teams found that outdated VPN platforms could not handle all the traffic of the remote employees. The only way to secure today's is not work from home, it's work from anywhere. Economy is to secure each employee, protecting their networks, devices, and access to business critical applications. The other aspect, Akshay, the threats are increasing, and not just by volumes, but also the sophistication of these threats. Threats are becoming more distributed, more sophisticated, and more automated. The threat actors could be launching these attacks from any corner of the world. So it's important to stop these attacks at the source and not at the door of the server or the applications in it. See, companies today have traditionally used castle and moat security architecture. This has created a barrier between the enterprise network and external threat. But today, the perimeter does not exist. The applications are moved to the cloud. Internet is your new corporate network. It's not just porous. It does not exist at all. So employees actually, if you see, are frustrated with the VPNs, and the organizations want an alternative for the expensive patchy VPN networks. So visibility and the threats coming across is across the internet, could be anywhere somebody could be launching. And as Sujay and others pointed out, there are tools available easily to launch. It's an underlying economy which people can source it and launch it. We heard about ransomware. Now it's ransomware DDoS asking for the money, right? So that's where, organizations like Cloudflare have built robust security products and solution which caters to the current threats and challenges. And on average, if I share, we block around 87 billion cyber threats each day across the properties of our network. So that's the scale and size which we are talking of.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that perspective. And I think that's a very helpful perspective. We'd like to know a little more about big data from you, Samuel, but we'll come back to you. So coming to Karan, Karan, essentially, you basically, just talking a little bit about models similar to Kissht, where you have a direct to customer model. Essentially, you are into microloan segmentation, and I'll be happy to hear more about Kissht. But if you could just help us understand, and not sharing or dwelling any confidential information, but for these kind of businesses, with the digital boom that our country is seeing today, there's a lot of inclusion which is happening. So, from that perspective, what do you think should be the top 3 charters of organizations like these from a complete data breach prevention standpoint? And if you could give an overall perspective, right from the governance to the technology, I think our audience will be really happy to hear that.
Sure. Akshay, thank you for bringing this up. Actually, I was just going to say that let me bring a very, very different perspective, right? My career started in a generation when cloud was the de facto standard. At Kissht, we are completely cloud first and cloud only. We don't actually own a single physical server or single network appliance. We've run on the cloud from day one, and I don't think there is ever an option for us to look back. So one of the things at least that we've done at Kissht is, leverage the cloud to be able to scale up much, much quicker than we would have been in any other traditional setup. One thing at least I would want to point out is right now we are having this discussion of whether cloud is safer than the traditional way of on-premise services and solutions. At least the normal answer I would want to give is hands down. It just goes without saying that cloud is infinitely more safer than any on-premise solution can happen. And let me at least just put that into perspective, right? When you're running an on-premise setup, you are having to kind of optimize two different parameters. One is the capabilities of your in-house team to configure those data servers, and the capabilities of your in-house team to continue to run those servers as well. When you go to the cloud, at least one part, there is one fail-safe that a cloud provider with a pedigree of Cloudflare, Amazon, Microsoft, or Google is taking care of the safety net for you. They are actually running the basics. They're making sure that the servers are patched. They're actually having a lot of background services monitoring some of the basics. So even if your team managing or configuring the servers gets it wrong, you at least have a safety net there. More importantly, getting configs wrong on the cloud providers, I believe, is much, much more difficult than getting it wrong on on-premise solutions. So when we just look at the cloud, or at least one thing I'm a big proponent of is I hope that next year we are doing a discussion on the reverse side that, why is not everyone already on the cloud? That's at least what I would hope. And that's what I believe the future holds. Coming from the perspective of, the big charters, I think the most important charter, undeniably, I think everyone agrees that the problem comes down to having the robust IT team to manage it, well-trained IT team to manage it. That I believe, investing for companies to invest in bringing their teams up to speed. There are a lot of amazing programs run, most of them free of cost, amazing programs run by Amazon, by Microsoft, by Red Hat, by almost all security companies. There should be an incentive for companies to make sure that employees are encouraged to take those. And I kid you not, 1 hour of such session actually brings a whole different level of insight to your IT team and your DevOps team. Secondly, I think at a business level, there has to be a massive buy-in to push to the cloud, like with both hands, rather than saying that, okay, you know what, we should look at moving to the cloud, or we should have a roadmap to move to the cloud. There should be that, okay, we have to go cloud first. I have seen this with banks of tremendous size executing a strategy over a very, very short period of time and coming out with amazing results. I mean, just to give you one example, like at Kissht, we are a company that does 1x volume for the large part of the year. But the day the big billion day sale happens at Flipkart, we are Flipkart partners for cardless credit. On the day that big billion day sale happens, the first 15 minutes of big billion day, we see about 10,000x of BAU. There is no reality possible when you're talking about an on-premise setup that you'll be able to scale up and down with a rational cost proposition that will allow you to scale up and down that quickly and that rapidly. And we are able to do that with a DevOps team of exactly 3 members. And that's the beauty of cloud. And from a security perspective, we obviously go through all the audits that RBI requires, NPCI requires. But more importantly, we also have a set of security operators who just literally are trying to hack into the system at all points of time, the white hat hacking, the red teaming, all of that. And I will tell you, it's so much easier to manage all of that, to capture all of that, quantify it, verify whether week on week your security is performing as expected when you're having a robust cloud mechanism. What cloud has also brought not only is the server infrastructure, but has also brought an immense number of tools and technologies to monitor, to quantify, to be sure I really have one single dashboard. I know that if I look at it's all green, I'm good. I don't have to go and ask someone, something is going right or wrong. It's very, very easily quantifiable, and that brings a sea change. So again, I'm just coming back to your primary question. The second, I think, imperative is for companies to actually have a push at the very, very top end to say that it's not, maybe cloud, it is 100% cloud. That has to come across.
Sure.
And at least the third one is, yes, we should never ever lose track of saying that in all of this, we want to loosen our security standards. In fact, I believe any organization moving from on-premise to cloud should have a relook at what their IT security protocols are and just ratchet them up a bit. That cloud brings in that flexibility. The same thing, you can actually operate at a much, much higher level of security measures, and that is what I think companies should relook at their security practices in the view of this new generation that Mr. Samuel said. It's the internet is your network. It's your corporate network is the whole internet, and that has to be the reality. When COVID hit, we had to actually send all the call center employees home. Engineering and analytics team can always work from home, never a challenge. But something like a call center to work from home where you have a 700, 800 member team sensitive data being exposed to them to make the calls. We were able to do that because we were cloud only. And I have seen the struggle with banks to kind of move to that reality. And COVID was also good wake up call for all of us to say that, okay, let's look at the cloud in a very different manner.
Sure. Thank you so much, Karan. I'll just quickly summarize what you just mentioned. You spoke about subscribing to cloud service providers who essentially have value-added services from a security perspective. Make sure that you subscribe to what is relevant, and at the same time you have enough security maintained there. You have very strongly proposed the cloud, because from a cloud perspective, the example that you gave in terms of porting during the work from home days and the new normal days, it was easy because it took you less than 2 or 3 days to basically make sure that the work from home arrangements are made because everything was on the cloud. You essentially also spoke about dashboarding. So if you see everything green on your dashboard, you're comfortable, and that's the ideal scenario that you would like to have. You said more than what the regulators talk about. In terms of the audits, you basically conduct more audits than they expected. So you essentially get deep insights in terms of your current state from a security perspective, and of course, looking at your exposure points from an internet perspective, and how customers can essentially feel secure while they subscribe. Moving my question to Akshay, and I'm just going to speak in the same breath here because there is one very important perspective, Akshay, that the conversation cannot be complete without talking about it, and that's privacy, right? Privacy is something where we have the PDP bill, which is right now in the bill stage. We've got the Indian IT Act Part 2, which speaks a little bit about it. Part 3 is still under ratification. So my question here is that today it's not only about a data breach which can cause an impact to the organization, but it's also about contract compliance, customer satisfaction. It's also about tomorrow, if there is a breach, can the customer actually hold the organization liable, and so on and so forth. So would you like to throw some light on those areas?
Thanks, Akshay. See, if I look at B2C lenders, especially when they get a large amount of consumers, there's a lot of concept about what is the amount of data which needs to get ported in from the consumer to make decisioning, and how do we make sure there's a fairness coming in between what is needed data, how data gets stored and warehoused, and how it can be used to give confidence to consumer that it actually works. If you look at over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of crackdown on what is the right amount of data to be taken, and why many of these, let's say, Chinese origin apps functioned in the country where they were taking a lot of data off people's smartphones, etc. I think what we have realized is 3 important elements. The evolution of companies can only take place that if they work with the best data stacks. So they can eliminate the need of multiple data sources coming in. The second is really about endpoint management. It's no more about a mobile app or a website sourcing digital consumers. Today you have multiple channels. It could be an SDK, it could be an embedded tech platform, it could be your partner system implemented somewhere else. If I look at my own company, we have close to 900 originating endpoints, which means we originate a customer in 900 different versions and not just my own app. But it's very important that at any given time, data is protected throughout the journey. So first is, how do you make sure data is protected and the consumer knows what amount of protection is being provided to him. The second is minimize the number of data which needs to be captured. For example, as we set up FACE, the FinTech Association, we came with clear mandates that you don't need to capture contact book, you don't need access of photo gallery, many data points which doesn't show any relevance in risk management, they need to go away. And that also gave more confidence. And today, most of, let's say, the large digital lenders clearly display what is the data they're going to capture and what they're going to use it for. At the same time, they show that they are part of a certification system saying we are not capturing this data and we comply by these governing council's rules. The third element is really to say, how is data getting warehoused? So this is very important. An early stage business cannot invest in creating warehousing capability on their own. And sometimes cloud systems come quite well, but also it's very important to work with best in class so that your team learnings becomes much faster. sometimes jumping on an AWS or a Microsoft server, etc., gives you capability equivalent to a large financial institution. Maybe you only have a 50, 60 member tech team building out your tech platform. And I think that's becoming very important. If you surely look at the consumers like most of us handle, I think today we have already disbursed 2 million loans. We have, right? If I look at a monthly volume, we're doing almost of 250,000 transactions on the platform. Now that is really just too large, and most typical mid-sized banks don't do those volumes, which means that either we go and invest in very heavy technology ourselves stacks, or really utilize the best-in-class systems available, which can be scaled in to handle any volume. Right? So these are three important pillars. One is very clear need of data should be available. Your endpoints need to be very well protected, so no malicious system can go through it. And last is investing in the best in class. And I think there where the cloud systems really come in place, so that you are at par or maybe better than the larger boys in the game.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we've spoken a lot about technology. We've spoken about best in class. We've spoken about cloud service providers. But I think, there is one area which definitely needs an attention. And Mukesh, my question to you here is, on the strategy and the policy of the organization. Because again, when you say cloud adoption, I cannot move my entire setup to the cloud. It has to be gradual. And a very important point that Akshay brought out was the risk-based approach. So would you like to throw some light on the risk-based approach, and also what do you think would be the right strategy for organizations who are either in the mode of moving or have partially moved, and so on and so forth?
It's a complex one. I think all of us are figuring out what's the right way to do it, what's the optimal balance. The first point is that whether you go to one cloud or two or three, like we are ending up having four: one private cloud on Microsoft platform, and outside we have AWS and Microsoft Azure, and some specific databases work on Oracle cloud. So, and Google is no far from convincing us in a way. So, how do you manage multiple clouds? You don't even get to see 360 view of your own systems altogether, because they're all in virtual clouds at different places. It's a bit scary if you try to visualize the situation. I think water will find its balance, and we will figure out how to manage all this together. And that's why I said we have set 3 to 4 years vision, and we have done about 20% already. But going forward, we have a cloud first approach that I don't get into any solution unless it's cloud first, cloud compliant, and and the best of solutions are coming on cloud mostly. So that's easier for us to choose when we go for new implementations. And also imagine managing 3 to 4 clouds in a hybrid cloud environment, where your one customer journey is going through possibly 2 or 3 or 4 clouds. So imagine the networks you're crossing, the databases you're crossing over, and so on. It's a complex world out there. Like right. I said earlier, that we'll figure it out over the next 2-3 years. People will learn. We need to absorb more talent internally. Blaze Clan kind of business partner we have is helping us there. So this will evolve, Akshay. There's no short answer to this. There's no one silver bullet for this.
Sure.
This will evolve over a period of time.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mukesh. Sujay, coming to you.
Sorry, Akshay, if you allow me, I need to quickly exit. I've got 4 reminders already. People knocking at the door. Sorry for exiting in between. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your insights.
It was good very helpful being with all of you. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye, Sujay.
Bye, Mukesh. Thanks.
Right. So Sujay, coming to the question, I'm sure you would have heard this question, and this would be a rhetoric in most of the forums that you would speak, but I would still bring it up because it's a very important one. And as we go along, there is only an increase of these attacks, and the question is on ransomware. If you could just help the audience and all of us understand, what are first of all, if at all an organization is hit by a ransomware, either in a dormant state or in an active state, what do organizations really need to do? Number one, and especially when there is a cloud adoption. Number two is, what could be a typical breach prevention strategy for organizations to take to avert any future incidents?
Yeah, I'll take the second part first, if you don't mind. See, what a lot of the actual breaches. I mean, there's a lot of it. A large percentage actually is either some kind of insider threat or it's a compromise by an individual in the company, right? And that line of defense, which is your employees, I think that has to be strengthened. Now, that could be from simple things like training, understanding, how phishing works. Every employee has to understand it and know what they need to do in that. Email screening filters, ensure that employee awareness is at the highest, and this is probably one of the easiest way in which infections and malware can get into an organization, and probably one of the tougher ways in which it can be prevented, right? So that's one big thing. Other one is the basics, as I covered earlier. Latest versions, malware protection controls, application whitelisting. I mean, all of those really have to come into play. An important aspect, and especially considering ransomware and what the typical modus operandi of ransomware is today, is a very clear backup strategy. What is the data? What is the data's classification? What kind of backups need to be taken? What is the frequency of backup? Is it real time? Is it something that needs to be backed up only infrequently? That strategy is really critical. Implementing comprehensive data encryption, and I think what is the risk framework you want to follow? What is the data which has to be kept where? I think that's entirely comes as part of the strategy. There has to be regular testing. So it's not that when you finally if when you get attacked, you start trying to figure out how to recover your data. Regularly recover your data and make sure that it is you're able to restore it and with minimal disruption to BAU, right? One of the other things which comes, and this is more in terms of what organizations need to do, but I think is more proactive, is really have a level of discussion at the level of what is your policy on engaging with ransomware? Is there, are you secure that your data is, if it's already encrypted, and it's a question of only your data being locked, and you have a recovery capability, it might be the end of the story for that. But if that's not the case, what is it that you're willing to do? Is there some kind of cybersecurity insurance you want to invest in? I think there are a lot of things which an organization needs to do, but I think where it really needs to get importance is in the boardroom. So organizations, put in the effort upfront to understand the risks, take the preventive action, and have a plan in place if something happens.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sujay, for that perspective. We're running short on time. We're getting a reminder. So, I just have one last round of questioning for, and then probably, and if I can just request the panelists to be a little more crisper in terms of their responses. So Samuel, we've seen rapid adoption of cloud services, which basically demand greater precautions for compliance, and of course the digital hygiene, which go hand in hand, right? So what are your views on that?
Great question, Akshay. Before I want to allude to what Karan brought up, and also what Mukesh highlighted in it. So I agree with what Karan said. Cloud is the reality, actually. So it is not as an option, should we evaluate on things like that. Whatever the pandemic has accelerated this digital transformation. Mukesh brought out a very pertinent question in terms of multiple clouds and things like that. So you look at the IT stack. There are three layers to it: the compute and the storage stack, then the applications, and then there's a network and security layer. Okay, the applications were the first to move out of instead of buying on-premises, rent as a service. And then the compute and storage moved. And the reality is your workloads are everywhere, distributed across. So what's needed from a security and network perspective is a unified control plane across your distributed workloads, which could be, as you said, it could be in Google, Amazon Cloud, or any of these clouds. You need a common unified network plane. What's currently what's happened, what was already happened on the the compute layer and the application layer is happening on today on the network layer. That's why the cloud transformation is complete, and Cloudflare is leading in that and providing the network and security in the cloud across distributed workloads. So security has to be seen as holistic and all-encompassing. Today, security is viewed very seriously, and it's a boardroom discussion. It's not a server room discussion. You cannot rely on point solution, as Karan rightly mentioned, that you cannot rely on a point solutions multiplier. Another thing is there are regulatory guidelines, which you said, there are compliance. Earlier, it was more of a checkbox. So today is no longer a checkbox. It is taken very seriously within organizations. There are various guidelines in the financial industry, be it the SEBI, the RBI, and our customers use Cloudflare to meet and exceed these expectations. So this is very extremely important for us as a company. It's just, our mission is to build a better internet rooted in importance of these aspects. We place our establishing the trust with our customers, users, and internet community globally. So to earn this, we maintain the trust, we ensure transparency in the way we conduct our business and work with, and ensure we comply with local and regional and global policies and applicable laws. So today, the reality is that threats are everywhere. Your workloads, as Mukesh said, that could be distributed everywhere. Your employees could be anywhere. You need an all-encompassing network, which stops your security threats at the source of it. So what we define it as a zero trust access. You cannot trust anything, and there is no perimeter to protect this. So rapid adoption, you mentioned of it's not. It is reality is inevitable. It does not just in terms of compliance and digital hygiene, but it is essential that people are taking it not as a checkbox, but it is the survival of the business relying on these architecture.
Sure. Thank you so much. We are running short on time, but Karan and Akshay, if there are any passing thoughts or any concluding thoughts, please feel free. I would request 30 seconds each, and then essentially we'll wrap up the session.
Well, nothing more to add from my side. I'll concede my time to Akshay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think one small request, I think at the end of the day, consumers have to be extremely careful how they use their suppliers and they use their lenders or they use their financial players, right? I think I always suggest to consumers, please, when you read about that company before you start working with them, and you can see the certification layer. Like today, let's say ISO is needed, a PCI DSS is needed to display cards. Similarly, what type of data capture is happening, etc. I think that's becoming a need of the hour. It only starts when the consumer starts demanding for minimum level of security where life will change, and we need to all drive focus towards that area.
Thank you. And I think that also forms a majority part of my concluding statement. At the end of the day, what are we protecting? Are we protecting the data? Are we protecting the customer's interest? I think both are equally important. At the same time, customer's interest is also equally important, and that's where the regulators are also pushing through. While you talk about customer's interest, the interest is well balanced between not only security but customer experience as well. And I think to improve the customer experience, there is a cloud adoption kind of strategies which are being adopted by banking and financial segment. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, and the audience, and of course the esteemed panelists, I would like to thank each one of you for being a patient audience and fantastic point of views by all the panelists. And well, Mukesh is not here to thank him, but of course, we thank all of you to basically share your valuable time and spending some time with us and sharing your views. So thank you so much, and back to you, please.